This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode contains spoilers from Seven Little Kisses by Samantha Ferrand with mentions of Bridge to Terabithia, Euphoria, Now and Then, and Daughters of the Moon series. For full list, please see show notes. There are also discussions surrounding death of a pet and sexual assault.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the fantasy, literature, and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are discussing Seven Little Kisses by Samantha Ferrand. And we are continuing, what, Jessica Marie?
We're going to continue the conversation of coming-of-age stories in media, which this feels like a good driver to begin the conversation.
And coming of age is such a unique, I think, kind of genre. And what is that? Well, I can Wikipedia just like anybody else. And it says a coming of age story is a genre of literature, theater, film, and video game that focuses on the growth of a protagonist from childhood to adulthood. Interesting genre. Immediately gives me the heebie-jeebies. It gives me the uncomfortable feeling of being in middle school, because when I think of coming of age, I think of middle school. I don't know why. It's just so formative. But also being so uncomfortable in my skin and unsure of where I fit in. And that, I think, is the core of coming of age.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like it's also not just in books. It's on the screen and media. And I remember, and part of the reason we started talking about this is, you know, as friends, we continue to learn and grow and learn new things about each other. And through this discussion prior to recording, Laura and I were thinking about what are the coming of age stories that you remember reading or that might have been impactful to you? And we quickly learned that we did not have the same exposure to those coming of age stories, especially in the classroom. I don't remember some of mine and some of mine I do. But I have a very vague familiarity in, coming of age stories set in a realistic fiction as opposed to a fantasy realm.
And that is interesting because the two coming of age stories that I did read in the classroom when I was young that absolutely scarred the absolute shit out of me, of course, are Bridge to Terabithia, that has a slight fantastical element, but also Where the Red Ferns Grow. Holy shit, that book. Those are coming of age stories in and of themselves, but also were very coming of age for me, because I do feel when I finished reading them that I was a different person, because it was one of those first experiences that I had with utter heartbreak, right? There's nothing, I mean, spoiler, hello, trigger warning, for Where the Red Ferns Grow. Jess, you'll never read this. Dog death is one of the worst possible things that could ever be in a fifth grade classroom. It was horrible.
I didn't know that people, that's usually the thing that is pets are the safe space. That's what we hear from all of our fantasy authors. If there's one character that's gonna live through it, it's gonna be the pets.
It's visceral. There's a very, the scene he's holding, it's awful. And that was exposed to us as children. So to me, there's a before and an after, kind of in the same vein and the same theme, interestingly enough, as The Lion King, which was the first movie that I ever cried in as a child. So it was before and after. It's I didn't know movies could hurt like that, because I was, this is the whole thing. Again, leaning into the feeling of being uncomfortable. Jess, you bring up movies, and we're talking about books And in Samantha's book, we have our very first kind of touch with that feeling of being uncomfortable. And that is, boys hurt you because they like you. And isn't that just something?
And it's something because, we're reading this in 2025. We're in 2025. So that's definitely something that we're trying to unlearn in a patriarchal society. I do remember being told that with like a kid who was bullying me. Fuck you, Sean. I still remember your name. And I was told that, oh, he only picks on you because he likes you. And and to this day, Laura, we've had these conversations. Me personally, and you too, the idea of like, oh, later down the line, like I got with my high school bully or my middle school bully. I don't want to give you the time of day. Why would you treat somebody that you're supposed to like, hurt their feelings? Like, I don't know. So I never, even if he like, oh, he liked me. Okay, well, I wasn't buying it. And I also wasn't, how sometimes when you're younger, sometimes somebody will say like, oh, so-and-so likes you. And they weren't even on your radar. And then all of a sudden you might develop a crush. That did not happen in 5th grade. Fuck you, Sean. So if he came around just like Isaac does in 7 Little Kisses no, because I like that she not necessarily called him out, but she's like, some douchebag pushed me when I was little. He's like, oh, is that douchebag? She's like, oh, damn. Which you knew it was going to be him immediately because she's like, there's something oddly familiar about him. I was like, it's Isaac.
The chemistry. So boys only hurt you because they like you. They pick on you because they like you. It starts in the beginning. It ends kind of the same way. You just kind of like, he hurts you because he likes you.
It follows the pattern.
Yes, it does.
You would have tussled a lot sooner. Lila was very calm. I like her mother. At least her mother said, she's like, hey, she's got shit to do. Wrap this shit up.
Wrap it up. You know what? We love Samaya's mother. She is absolutely incredible. And what a wonderful figure throughout this book, a pillar of strength and just loveliness. Because the other thing too, again, this theme of being uncomfortable is you can't have a coming of age story without having awkward sex and awkward feelings about, the sexual aspect of your life and growing up and discovering yourself as a sexual person, which means that everyone around you is a sexual person, and processing that is super weird. Like, and at this age, you're just like, oh my God, my teachers and ew. And you're really kind of like realizing, that it's going to be like that forever. Right. So I
just thought of a story. Yeah, we could cut it out if we want. So when my brother and I were old enough to know what sex was and how you make babies, and then my dad told us that my stepmom was pregnant, and we were like, wait, when did they do this?
You're trying to like clock. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, horrifying. But we're home all the time.
It's a horrifying realization. So you have all of these thoughts, right? So then you are in middle school, you're in high school, you're having all of these weird sexual feelings, and then we have these like Lila and Samaya kind of going through it, but also you as the viewer are kind of cringing, as the reader are kind of cringing. And for me, watching stories of like awkward sexual encounters, it's just like, oh God. It's like when two kids get their braces stuck together, you're just like, oh God. I can't. I kind of feel that way with how Samaya has her high school boyfriend. He is friends at first, and then the friendship kind of turns into something more, but then it's been going on for a while, and she's not like, quote, putting out, and that is just not acceptable in high school boy terms. And like, we've all kind of been in that situation, and you're just like, here's something that I want to point out. I want to point out that Samaya and Lila are in 7 Little Kisses are 13 when they are smoking weed behind the movie theater. after her mom drops them off. And I just want to say, hey, friend, I know what that's like. And that's a situation where I was like, I see you, you see me, we see us, and the boys are there, and it's like, be cool, the boys are there.
The amount of times that you used because the movie theater, that was the gathering spot in town. And at 13, and you're trying to be like, oh, it's just me and my friend going. All these other people also happen to be there. What do you know? Didn't plan it at all. At one point, I definitely lied to my mom, and she fucking caught me and dragged me out of the theater. Like, it was awful. But the whole meetup with everybody else, it was the only movie theater in town. Like, that's where you met up. That was your third place.
Yes, exactly. That was your third place, and you're 13. And what do you do? Like, that's what you do. So mad respect. We talk about being uncomfortable. Let's talk about relatability, because that is just this huge thing. And then you're uncomfortable, right? And kind of you go to the movie and you're just it's a lot. And oh my God, I'm going to be high in front of my mom, and my mom's going to see us. And you have that kind of dread and that feeling, and with your friend, it was very relatable, preteen angst. And at my big age, I don't read a lot of preteens. So it was nice to kind of see this age that I kind of want to forget in my own life. That is fun to kind of see through this filtered lens a little bit.
And a little bit of a universal experience too, because just oh, we're going to meet up, and oh, the awkwardness of I don't want to do this thing, but your friend really wants to do this thing. And there's these other people that you're kind of awkward and uncertain around because they're the same people who also bully you, which is essentially how you got out of the situation to meet your new best friend. But this is your best friend is kind of your rock in these moments. So you don't want to be uncool to the cool people. And I'm using air quotes in when I say this. So it's just, like you said, it's the awkwardness.
It is. It's very awkward. But also, middle school for me personally was hell. High school was a bit better. So let's talk about Samaya's high school a bit. She fits in a bit, but there's this awkwardness, and there's these boys, and then there's these other girls, and then we have Lila. It's all very, but here's the thing. Samaya is not boring. And I felt that throughout the whole book, because I was thinking, it's what is something that I could realistically compare this to? I was I don't know. I could maybe Cassie's sister in Euphoria, and her kind of storyline. I kind of see that. She goes to the things. She's social. She has the friends, but she's a little back, a little more observant, right? We're a little more eye out on everybody. And I did appreciate that, because high school is where you get a majority of your coming of age, material when it comes to TV and movies. That is really the bulk of it, I feel. But those middle school years are just so oof, right? They hit harder than high school.
I wouldn't want to relive them. Yeah. I wouldn't. If we could skip, if I knew now what I knew then, or knew then what I knew now. And you're just I'd still want to fly by those middle school years.
Mm-hmm. So awkward sexual encounters. Let's circle back to that. I want to touch on Samaya's mom being an absolute queen with those rules. I love it. Excellent. Here's the thing about strict parents. Strict parents make you creative.
Make creative teenagers.
Yeah. Strict parents make creative teenagers. And that's apparent here, right? We have plans, we have routines, we have this is how we smoke in my house. What if my mom comes? There's danger here. It's fun. It's fun. But again, we have this high school pressure of sex, which is prominent in all teen media, I think.
Yeah, and now you have to add the layer of how accessible things are through technology. So here you have boyfriend Keenan talking about fetishes at 16, and what he likes, and she must have a fetish. And that's like, she's like, because he can experiment on the things that he might like because of how accessible things are. It's not just like a magazine or a movie or however people used to attain their, explore their fetishes in high school. It's just like, I think I like this because this is what I've watched.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about that, because you bring up a really good point in technology. So one of my favorite coming of age films is Now and Then. I love it. And of course, it's set in the 90s. We go back to, I think, the 60s. I think it's been a while. But that, there's no phones there. We're on our bikes. We're kind of stalking Devon Sawa. It's fine. And that movie kind of reflected the times, right? And then you go up a little bit, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, reflecting of the times. So I do find it an interesting thing to note that media reflects like the culture of the time. So this might seem like racy. I say racy to us with a 16-year-old talking about their fetishes, but in the context, like, maybe, right? Like, sure. There is nothing to indicate that this isn't set, like, present day-ish, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's usually something that I think there was like, we know it's after 2004 because there was a reference to Facebook. That's all we got, really. So, but I mean, again, that shows where we were. And I think because we know what age they're in middle school, they're talking about Facebook. So that gives us, that's the biggest timeline where we get of where we are in the technological scale. So you knew if we're starting at day one, 2004, Instagram doesn't exist, but the internet very much does. And Napster and LimeWire and any type of downloadable service that you can gain material for these things for conversations.
Which is kind of nuts to think about.
So crazy.
It's so crazy. It is absolutely crazy, but important. Again, an important thing to have for someone to read, because while it might be like, whoa, out of pocket for us, to somebody that is younger than us that picks this up now could be like, oh yeah, that's absolutely how it is. Actually, it's worse now. Like, it's worse.
It's actually worse now. Well, and then you find out that Lila's been running a Tumblr account. When was peak Tumblr? Like 2014, 2015, like in the late 2010s, really. So like, again, we have our timeline of what your accessibility was.
And a Twilight Tumblr at that, which is so fun.
Oh, wait, and they bring up, so we do have a timeline because they talk about seeing Breaking Dawn in the theater.
So let's talk about that friendship, Lila and Samaya. A friendship that starts off kind of strange, and I felt was a little off kilter for a while until everybody kind of like found themselves a bit after, like, during and after college. But those initial like readathons and hangouts were very important to Samaya and her self-confidence and her growth, really, as a person, as a friend, as a daughter, and socially, emotionally, all of these things. And it is silly to think about, but it is important that you have a friend that you can just like sit in silence with and just like chill and like read. And that is a special kind of friendship that not everybody has. So to know that that is the foundation of their friendship and then to see where it goes is, again, uncomfortable and interesting, and shows that female friendships especially are very complicated.
Yeah. And one thing I do think it was maybe important to highlight is that they were able to have disagreements, and still that wasn't the end all be all. They still came back to each other. They still kind of had to work it through. But yeah, I feel like but there were times, I think there was like during one of our timelines, she was like, I haven't seen you by yourself for 3 years. since you got in a relationship. I've only been with you as a third wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay. So we're in college. Let's talk about college. Trigger warning. There is an assault here. And that was very jarring, and I was unexpected, and I was like kind of sad about this whole thing.
Do you remember seeing it in the trigger warnings? I don't, but I don't know if I glossed over it.
I don't either. It is worth a double check, because I was just like, whoa, there's no way. There's no way. There is a way though. And it happened. And that again, important, realistic. We're in realistic fiction here. So again, tell your truth, share your story, but hot damn, that was like really difficult to read. But again, important for, Samaya's like health and growth to process and deal with that in her own way, while still, trying to maintain the balance in relationships of processing this and still going out and having a life and not letting it like take over her, and still having a relationship, with her mom and her friends and her grade, her grades, her career, finding herself, her professor, the women's shelter, all of these things. And then to have all of that interwoven with Isaac. Oh, he needs a swift punch to the nose.
I feel like if I had an Isaac in my life, you would have confronted him a lot. Well, Lila never did. And you would have been like, if you don't say something, I will.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can trust that. Infuriating, because we all know this person, right? We've all met this person. So you want to talk about things that are relatable, but also uncomfortable. It's just like this man that you meet, that you connect with, and you have these conversations and these adventures with, and you go and like, you visit things and you see them like with new eyes, right? It's languages you can't speak with anybody else. Same, that kind of connection, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's just like, but not now. But not now. Come visit me. And with all these men and hang out with me. Not now.
To the point that the other men think that you are in a relationship. To the point where you are begging for forgiveness and calling her and seeing her at every point. You get to have your cake and eat it too. You have the emotional connection and the emotional attachment of a girlfriend without the responsibility of being a boyfriend, physically or otherwise.
And the guilt tripping, right? Like, I'm just not ready. You're my everything. The gift. The gift would have sent me over if anything hadn't before then. I mean, honestly, the graduation would have sent me over. And it's because it was him. That's my other thing. It's because if it was him, if it was any of my female friendships, and they were like, look, this thing came up. And I feel like it's reciprocated too. You're like, no, you have to do this. We will figure it out. We can celebrate post, but you have to do this thing. But it's him. And I feel like Samaya was the same way too. If it was any of her girlfriends, she would have been like, no, you got to do this thing where, it was because he made the promise. And you have it. You told me you had you already knew when you made the promise, the bigger thing. Because if he said in that moment, you know what, I just committed. I didn't know you wanted me there and I had already committed to this other thing. But let's do it when I get back. Easy. But no, make it difficult, make it awful, wreck everything. Right. And again, try to steal her joy and her happiness the night of her party. Oh, that's such a classic move.
Make it about them.
Make it about them.
Oh, and then when why won't you get, you're really, and then in the gaslighting. He's like, why are you making it about you? Because it's my graduation. Why wouldn't I make it about me? Like,
it's
you're
all
making
about
me act like I have to choose. You did. And you chose. Mm-hmm. Carry on. You wanted to talk. We're talking. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to be said.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely not. And like we said, we all know this person, but a lot of people have been in a situation like this. And again, it is nothing new to be deeply disappointed by men. I feel like that is just a universal, talk about universal experiences. Being deeply disappointed by a man that you thought was going to be there. You thought you meant more to this person than you do, and you don't at all. You mean actually like way less.
And it's compounded on the already established issues that she had. I don't want to say daddy issues because that really minimizes like a lot of the things that Samaya goes through, but the deeper relationship issues that she has with her biological father that he's also aware of. It's not this thing where she never shared. He is very well versed in her disappointment with the significant male figures in her life. And he added to it. He contributed it to it even more.
Yeah, whether he meant to or not, but being a man-child should be a crime, I swear to God, because that's exactly what he is. So, oof. And I love her mother, just as you mentioned earlier, for coming in and just being like, your guests are coming, get the fuck up off the phone. Oh, you want to talk to somebody? Fine, talk to me. Hi, baby. I love it. I love it. Like, what a fantastic moment of the mom just clocking the situation. Consistently, she's clocked that situation too. And again, like the queen that she is just like, get up off the phone, go downstairs, drink your ass off, and have fun. Because again, because of the assault in college, and this is the end of college, we have a slight anxiety about drinking, like a bit of a hang up about drinking, because Lila really laid into her about it. Like, you're embarrassing me. Like, get your shit together. Like, you can't act like this. The night that Samaya was assaulted and she had too much to drink, she had too much to drink and was taken advantage of. And Lila left her there. And I think that is something that, I mean, no woman left behind ever. She broke the code there.
Yeah, and she admits to it. And I feel like at some point, and again, this story feels kind of choppy sometimes. So I feel like we are taking context clues. And again, this is complete assumption. I don't know if because it's not on paper, that Samaya has shared what happened with Lila at some point, because Lila, Samaya is saying like she notices Lila is always watching how much Samaya has to drink. And whereas Samaya is taking this as, oh my God, she doesn't trust that I can handle my alcohol, Lila's thinking about it as the last time I left her, I'm the reason this happened to my best friend.
I just want to throw in the Catholic guilt here because it's brought up in a conversation between Samaya and Isaac. That is just like that is like heavy Catholic guilt right there. But also she should feel that way because no woman left behind ever. You do not leave your friends like that. It doesn't matter what is going on. But lesson learned, I think, because they do have that moment where they talk it out and they hug it out and they go get ice cream, they being Lila and Samaya, and they go get ice cream, and this is where Lila is like, yo, I am unhappy. I am an unhappy person right now. And also, I think Lila's story is also an important story to hear as well. Did I settle at 19? His parents are coming. I cleaned the whole house. He doesn't care. They didn't know anything about me. Like, am I supposed to have my whole life? All he does is school and cook now to manage his stress. Like, I hate this.
Yeah. And I feel like, and I liked it, and this comes with female friendships and just knowing the other. And they said, like, is this like a smoke and talk or an ice cream and talk? And they didn't answer. She's like, okay, it's a both. This is some serious shit. And also, again, to go back to, you've been in a relationship for 3 years. I haven't had one-on-one time with you, but you knew that it was going to lean that way when the first thing Lila said is, oh, by the way, I'm staying over tonight. No ifs, ands, or buts. We need a sleepover. We need our girl time. I think there's a lot of layers to Lila. She's also, pre-med. She's doing this. She's pre-med living with her boyfriend in undergrad. And the expectations are so different because she's like, why am I so focused on a guy Lila has never been hung up on a guy the way she is about George. She was very much like, why am I making the effort? It's his family and they know nothing about me.
Yeah. And that was a conversation too, because it shows it's just like we're reconnecting. This is what's going on in my life. This is what's going on in my life. These are the big things. Let's talk it out. And George shows up with flowers. He's like, hey, can we talk? And they talk. Again, though, they talk and they leave her like on the fucking curb for a long time. Long enough where she's like, hello.
I think that whole scene is awkward because, they're having the serious conversation. And I'm just like imagining like our local like ice cream shop. And you're just like looking at the two couple in the car and just playing on your phone, sitting there, which is why at one point she was like, y'all, you have a lot to talk about. And I know it's probably heavy. I'm going to walk. It's not that bad. We're in a safe area. Like it's fine. And they're like, I'm going to drive you back. Couldn't we have done this earlier? Like, here's my thing. Hey, how about we talk? How about, we do need to talk. And somebody say, talk? You could even park outside my house. Let me just be home, please.
Yeah. Again, Lila is a good friend. She's not a great friend. Because they follow her home, like they tail her. And then they're like, oh, get in the car. Like, let's all go. And then they do end up driving her home. But it's like, rude. Okay. So at the end of the book, Samaya has a thread of working really hard in college and like trying to get the respect of her professor, getting the respect of her professor, working at the women's shelter, and then like really, really succeeding there and like finding a good place there, and then applying to go to Miami. And that part of it too, I think is very important. The moving on to the next step, because we've been with Samaya since kindergarten, since we were, single digits, and now we're leaving college. We're going on to the next step. We're going to Miami, and her professor says, like, when you are all done, when you have done everything you need to do, come back and you will have a job here. But don't come back. And I think this is such an important message too, and important for everybody, that like leaving can be a good thing. Because kind of a thread throughout Seven Little Kisses is Florida. And Florida is kind of its own character, kind of like New York is its own character, or LA is its own character in some books. Florida is a huge character here, so much so that Isaac is like, you're from Florida. You like talk about it all the time.
You made it like part of your personality.
Yeah. So, and Miami, of course, is still in Florida, but leaving your safe place and going somewhere else to experience something is a huge step. And even if it's a relatively small step like this was, just from one city in Florida to another city in Florida, I understand how big Florida is. I know the context here, so it wasn't that far. But like, if you go up and then you go west, it could be very far. So like, just bear with me.
And also like a cultural thing, like I think especially at the end, she's like, okay, we're assuming she stayed in state because she was, she grew up in Florida. She was only an hour from home. So it was still within commuting distance because she did live at home for a little bit. And then she talks about going to Miami. And then she's like, look, I could live at home, save money there from the dorms, this, that, the other thing. And then she goes to Lila's wedding and she's like, oh, do you want to go for a walk on the beach or something? I can't believe everything is within like an X amount of radius that I'm familiar with this place. And Florida is so big. So if you're going, if you grew up in the Panhandle and you're going to school at University of Miami, that is going to be kind of a culture shock compared to when you're going to school in like North Florida and then just going to like UCF or Stetson or like any of the Central Florida college. Like it's very different.
Yeah, definitely. Also, just for context, if you're in the Panhandle of Florida and you want to get down to Miami, that is a double-digit drive in hours. Like, just know that. That's like a
at
solid...
least 12, 13. Because you either have to cross 10 down to 95 or 10 to 75 to get over to 95.
And if you're coming from the Panhandle, you'll gain an hour going from Central Time to Eastern Time as well. So Florida's a very complicated giant state that when you look at it, you're like, not that big, but when you map it out, huge. So again, leaving the area that you're familiar with and going to somewhere else and experiencing that is such a big deal and is something that should be encouraged. Travel should always be encouraged. That's like a huge thing. And also like Isaac going around and traveling everywhere is kind of painted as a negative a little bit because he like can't put down roots and like, you know, all this stuff. He's like unreliable. You don't know where he is. He's homeless, you know, all of this stuff. But travel in and of itself is a wonderful tool to change your life, and that should always be explored. And it is lovely that Samaya is exploring it here at the end. And it is, I think, kind of a hallmark of coming of age movies. A lot of them end like going to college or graduating college or like, you know, getting that first job. Not many of them end. And here's a good point with like, got the new boyfriend, right? Not a lot of them end like that. A lot of them end with like a singular accomplishment, like academically or socially, emotionally, but it isn't like, I'm dating a guy.
Yeah, no, usually it's the, you know, those taglines. It's like, in a world where I thought I had to choose somebody, I wound up choosing myself. But she didn't. Yeah. She didn't.
What was the choice? What, how do we end this story?
It was either new boyfriend or Isaac.
Exactly. But it is, though, interesting that new boyfriend is also boyfriend that is, I don't know. How do we feel about new boyfriend?
I feel like new boyfriend had potential. She was already introducing him to her mom on the 4th date. So she saw that there was longevity there. But she also, like, there's dialogue where Samaya is saying, he's the safe choice. He's comfortable. So that within itself is, I'm settling. I don't have the butterflies. This doesn't make me excited, but this will do. And if Isaac didn't show up, she was ready for date 5 with this guy. She was ready to settle down with him because she kept saying, this is the timeline. I see it. We're going to be married in 3, you know, we're going to be engaged in 1, married in 3.
2, yeah.
We're going to have kids. It's going to be comfortable. It's going to be safe. Mom loves him. He paid for dinner. He was raised right. You know, on paper, he was what she thought she wanted and might still think. I don't know.
And what do we think she wanted?
I don't think she knew what she wanted.
Yeah. That is the point made excellently, as always, Jessica Marie. In coming of age stories, it is a hallmark, right? To be confused, to not know yourself, because as a young adult, not knowing yourself is fine. It's about the journey to find yourself. You shouldn't know yourself until you're in your 30s, right? Like you should always be learning and growing and experiencing and kind of solidifying the person that you will be, and not focusing so much on who you are, right?
Yeah. And I feel like even in your 30s, you're still discovering yourself too. I mean, that was a huge conversation, especially like peak pandemic, that people were like, who I thought I was in my 20s and my teens and who I am in my 30s, and I'm discovering myself. And it's like algorithms are like, oh my gosh, I was married and then I was divorced. Because is this the type of person that I want to have in my life full time, long term? I mean, there's a lot of discussions there for people in their 30s and things that they were discovered, but also to think that who you are right after you graduated college and who you are entering grad school, is that going to be the same person? Some of your core values will be the same. Am I a good person? Am I going to be, have more of a voice? But that's still getting established too, as we all continue to unlearn certain traumas that we might not have even gotten to explore because we didn't have a safe space yet, or a safe environment that we have yet to create for ourselves. So we are constantly exploring. So to say like, oh, she doesn't know who she is. The only thing that she knew who she was at the end of this book was that she was still boy crazy.
Still boy crazy.
And she still centered her life around men.
Yes. Yes. And Isaac comes back, and what did that like bring up for you?
I rolled my eyes. It's like, of course he did.
Of course he did. Of course he did. He's got to make it about him, right? His feelings.
And then he was like, I saw you at this wedding and it didn't make me feel good. And it made me feel like I don't want to see you at a wedding with a date that isn't me. But I also don't want to commit to you still.
Yeah. I also don't want to date you. So,
but then this is where I'm like, I don't like maybe the mother's track record, more or less, because she picked out a great new boyfriend. We like Robert. Robert's supportive. He's a great stepdad. But then she keeps encouraging her daughter to see him. The one with the red flags all over it. I'm like, really? And sometimes I'm sure people will be like, oh my God, but they're romantic. They're like, it's serendipitous. They keep getting pulled back to each other, but they're not. That's the thing. Like nothing has ever come out of it except she, like Samaya says in the book, she goes, I don't want to keep hurting because he's hurting me. He's the reason I'm upset. And then I'm upset at myself because I let him get to me. So she's self-aware, but then like beyond that.
Jess, how does this book end?
What's the line? It ends with, I might be boy crazy and that's okay. And more or less words.
Yeah.
Which again, I feel like doesn't align necessarily with like the thing that I just said, where I was just like, and in a world with all of these choices, I choose myself. That is one thing I feel like is typically consistent about coming of age stories, is that the main character chooses themselves or chooses like the greater good, the bigger picture. If we like think of fantasy examples,
the greater good, the greater good. Yeah. I think there's a conversation to be had about reframing boy crazy, because I do feel like it falls into the category of girls can't like anything. Let's give them this label. They can't like anything. Guys can catcall and say all sorts of things, rude things when women walk by in packs. Why can't girls be boy crazy? Oh, they're boy crazy over bands, and that's so silly. The Beatles, One Direction, NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, all of these things. That's boy crazy, and that's bad. So I do feel like there is a conversation to be had about, Jess, you brought up decentering men, but also changing the language.
Well, this is like when, when people like, you have to unlearn it. People always will say like the walk of shame. Like you should be shameful for owning your sexuality. Nobody says the guys have to do a walk of shame. It's always with women. And that's why you have to try to be like, well, let's own it. Let's stride with pride. Yeah, you got yours. Yes, you took ownership of your sexuality and you had control of the situation. And I feel like you're right. Like this is like an unlearning. And in the book, in Seven Little Kisses, they are talking about, one of the fights that Samaya and Lila have. Samaya is saying like, well, you suck so-and-so's dick, aren't you? And like, why are we making this a shameful thing? At which point, Lila eventually comes back. She goes, and you said it so shamefully. Nobody is saying, no men are going around saying slut to their frat brothers. Nobody's saying that. So like, why are you doing that?
Exactly. And especially now in 2025, where we're doing absolutely everything we can to survive, and we're trying to find joy in all of the right places and looking in all of the wrong places too, that everywhere is valid, because we need to find the joy. It is important to acknowledge and see that language use and words have value and meaning. And if books reflect the times, and the times are now, and now is scary, then it's important that we have the conversations around ownership and pride in yourself, And knowing that the uncomfortable feeling that you have, be it when you were a child, growing up, college, now, jobs, kids, whatever, that uncomfortable feeling can serve you. And that's your gut, right? Like a lot of times that's your gut, and that can really like serve you and help you along the way, and is a feeling that you shouldn't ignore. And I think that is a thread kind of running throughout all of this is don't ignore your feelings. Express your feelings, own your feelings, and know that even though sometimes your feelings will make yourself and others uncomfortable, it's better than to stew with them and be strung along in a years-long situationship with a hot guy that will not commit and would do anything to ruin your life except date you.
Yeah. More decentering men. That's where I'm at. Unless you're like peak book boyfriend, which Isaac is not.
Yeah, no, for sure. Isaac is not a peak book boyfriend, but I think Samaya is a wonderfully complex, interesting character that takes us through the throes of growing up in Florida with a single mom and kind of navigating that type of environment. It's difficult. It's heartwarming. It is uncomfortable at times. And it also is kind of a lens into a time, a place, a feeling, and the coming of age in a time when things are wild.
Do you have a favorite coming of age book and coming of age movie that you liked and enjoyed growing up?
Oh, excellent question. I hope you answered those as well. Growing up, so I mentioned Now and Then. I'll mention Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I will mention. I don't want to give any airtime to that horrible woman, but Draco and Where He Is From. And let me see. My favorite, honestly, my favorite coming of age books that I read when I was a kid are the Daughters of the Moon.
That's a good one. And I'm like, man, I wish I had these and I read them. Now I get to read them as an adult. What about movie? Did you say movie? Did I miss that?
Movie. Well, like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
Okay.
Sure.
Kinda.
Yeah, but honestly, I can't really think of one off the top of my head. I keep thinking about She's All That for some reason.
I was thinking that too, but I was like, is it really coming of age?
Yeah, I don't think so at all, but I don't know. If you stretch the definition limits, maybe it could be. It's just kind of like a teen romp, as it were. But
yeah.
She's All That has really been stuck in my head. Kind of
probably because they canceled their fucking thing on us.
They did. Jessica Marie and I had tickets to go watch She's All That with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Rachel Lee Cook in theater and have Q&A.
Like a Q&A and meet and greet, and then they canceled it everywhere.
And then they canceled it all over, which was upsetting. So it is stuck in my brain a little bit. Kind of the last thing before we wrap here is I do want to kind of point out that a lot of the things that I mentioned were not like realistic fiction. I mean, obviously, hello, it's me. I read a lot of fantasy growing up. And I do feel like there are a lot of coming of age stories, especially now. I mean, I can name a few, that we have covered on the podcast, not to compare, and I won't, but we have them. And they use fantasy elements as a way to represent the tougher themes of the times that the characters are dealing with. So instead of like an abusive family, it is a enormous snake, or it is a underground volcano, or it is a fantastical element that is wreaking havoc on our life. Oh, Buffy would be a good one. That is impacting us directly, and we are able to choose ourselves because we have the power within us, right, to defeat this evil. And that is what I was more familiar with growing up using fantasy as. And so it is then, just to say it again, a little bit uncomfortable for me to read a realistic fiction depiction of this genre because it's really close to home. And it also makes me think of what was it, Penis Pen 15, like that. Like it's just one of those things where you're like, ooh. But the different elements between using fantasy and then having a realistic fiction coming of age story are really something to look at. And I would be interested to see who prefers one over the other and why.
Yeah, I think that's where I feel like, is it the realism that makes things uncomfortable, right? And I feel like that's kind of because we are so familiar with fantasy. And Laura, we were talking about, you're like, how do you not remember some of these things? I mean, this wasn't extracurricular reading. This was read in school. And I was trying to remember things that I read. And I go, well, I remember the things I read outside of school, but I didn't really remember the things within school that were quote unquote coming of age. And the ones that had the fantastical element. It had this dystopian element. It had something, like you said, was more digestible in a way that felt, oh, this is, anytime somebody says the government wouldn't do that, they would. And that was kind of the messaging through the fantastical elements to be like, it's scary when it's in black and white and right in front of you. So scary and uncomfortable and all of the things. So let's make it more palatable. And it's the fantasy that made it more palatable in the coming of age media that I consumed.
Answer your own questions, book and movie.
You know what I was thinking for movie? I'll start with movie. I think John Hughes's 16 Candles. I remember loving that as a kid. Like, it was one of those things that, I think John Hughes felt safe that you can let your kids watch it without having to censor it from the adults in our lives. And it hit all of those elements, feeling uncomfortable, getting invited to the dance, then having the night of your life with your crush, who's the only person who remembered your birthday. Like, I feel like the closest 16 Candles equivalent would kind of be a Cinderella story with Hilary Duff and Chad Michael Murray. Book. I feel like book, I think the closest thing might be not even the Babysitters Club. I think Sweet Valley High, because there were many iterations of it. You had like the classical ones. It was like revamped a couple times. It was also like revamped into a series, like a television series. And you got to see different elements, different relationships. I remember thinking and there was also a graduation, and then I think there was Sweet Valley University, but I didn't read those. But again, all of those would encompass that coming of age and different experiences and different POVs that came with growing up. I feel like those two would be the closest, but again, Sweet Valley High wasn't being told, you weren't being told to read it in school. I told you, I was like, oh, we had a Mitch album as the required reading. And so I don't know. That's kind of crazy. Or like, what school are you going to that they want you to reach Mitch album? But here we are.
It's hilarious. Jess, would you recommend this book?
I feel like it's hard because I don't I haven't had the coming of age realism stories. So I don't think this, even as somebody who comes from like an immigrant family with a very, very, I don't even know how to say it, layered family dynamic. So I didn't feel like this spoke to me. I didn't feel like I related to certain situations that are very universal, like we mentioned. I think test it out yourself, or maybe it could be like good in in the coming of age, I say in air quotes, like a middle school library or a high school library, just to like feel how like some of these experiences are universal, with the caveat of trigger warnings.
Yeah, absolutely. Trigger warnings for sure need to be all over this. I think that I would recommend this book under the right circumstances to the right person. I would not just be willy-nilly with this. I would be very careful with my recommendation on this, just because I want to make sure that the person that would pick this up would appreciate the nuance of the characters and the situation and really understand that this is a serious story. This isn't funny. Like there is joy here, but it is not ha ha hee hee.
Yeah, I wouldn't take this as a like, oh, this is a cute little rom-com that like, cause I mean, it's not a long story. I think it's like, it's under 300 pages. So it's not like, oh, let me do this as a quick read. I know you read this pretty quickly. But yeah, I feel like it definitely has to encapsulate somebody who this is something, and this is a genre that they're familiar with, that they would enjoy and understand that there are heavier topics. Because when I think of that, I think of Dear Alice. I should have not have been reading that in middle school.
Yeah. We were reading Pillars of the Earth. I mean, who is in charge of our reading list? Honestly.
But that being said, feel free to follow us on Instagram. We're at ACOFAE Podcast. We're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. Feel free to follow us on YouTube and rate us on your listening platforms for 5 stars. We appreciate it so much. Thanks, and talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Bye.